What if I told you that one court case, one single day in a Washington courtroom, could bring down a rising political star in a matter of hours? That's exactly what happened to Senator Mark Donovan, a man who was once called the future of the Republican Party. But by the end of this story, you'll be asking yourself, was he a victim of a ruthless system, or did he deserve every second of his downfall? Let's dive into the scandal that shook the nation. Senator Mark Donovan was a name on everyone's lips in 2023. At just 42 years old, he was the youngest senator from Texas, a charming family man with a perfect smile and a reputation for getting things done. He'd risen through the ranks faster than anyone in recent memory, winning his Senate seat in a landslide victory. People said he was destined for the White House, maybe even as early as 2028. He was a conservative darling, a vocal supporter of tax cuts, border security, and traditional values. But behind the polished image, there were whispers. Whispers of shady deals, secret meetings, and a hunger for power that knew no bounds. It all started with a construction project, a massive infrastructure deal in Texas worth $2 billion. The project was supposed to build new highways, create jobs, and boost Donovan's reputation as a senator who delivered for his state. But in early 2024, an anonymous whistleblower dropped a bombshell. They leaked documents to the press, claiming that Donovan had rigged the bidding process to favor a company called Apex Construction, a company with ties to his biggest campaign donors. The allegations were explosive. Donovan had allegedly taken $5 million in bribes to secure the contract, funneling taxpayer money into the pockets of his allies while cutting corners on safety regulations. The media went into a frenzy. Headlines screamed, "Texas Senator Caught in Corruption Scandal." And is this the end for Mark Donovan? Liberals called him a hypocrite, pointing out how he'd campaigned on cleaning up Washington. Conservatives were divided. Some defended him, saying it was a witch hunt, while others distanced themselves, worried about the party's image. Donovan, for his part, denied everything. In a press conference, he stood in front of the cameras, his wife and kids by his side, and said, "I have never, and I will never, betray the trust of the people of Texas. These allegations are baseless, and I will fight to clear my name." But the whistleblower's documents were damning. They included emails, bank records, and even a recorded phone call where Donovan allegedly told an Apex executive, "Make sure the payment clears by Friday, and I'll handle the rest." The FBI launched an investigation, and by mid-2024, Donovan was indicted on charges of bribery, fraud, and misuse of public funds. His trial was set for November 2024, and it was the most high-profile case Washington had seen in years. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, activists, and even some of Donovan's Senate colleagues showed up to watch the drama unfold. The trial began on November 10, 2024. In a federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. The prosecution came out swinging. They presented the leaked documents, showing how Apex Construction had donated $3 million to Donovan's campaign through shell companies. They called witnesses, including a former Apex employee who testified that Donovan had personally met with the company's CEO to negotiate the deal. The employee said, "I heard the senator say, I don't care about the other bids. Apex gets the contract, or I walk." He knew exactly what he was doing. Donovan's defense team tried to poke holes in the story. They argued that the whistleblower was unreliable, that the documents could have been doctored, and that the recorded call was taken out of context. Donovan himself took the stand, a risky move for any defendant. He looked straight at the jury and said, "I've spent my entire career fighting for the people of Texas. I would never risk that for a few dollars. This is a political hit job, plain and simple." For a moment, it seemed like he might sway the jury. His charisma was undeniable, and some jurors were visibly moved by his testimony. But then came the bombshell. On day 3 of the trial, the prosecution called a surprise witness, Emily Harper, Donovan's former chief of staff. Harper had worked for Donovan for 5 years, and she was known as his right-hand woman. But now, she was testifying against him. The courtroom fell silent as she took the stand, her hands trembling. The prosecutor asked, "Ms. Harper, did Senator Donovan ever discuss the Apex Construction deal with you?" Harper nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," she said. "He told me to make sure the other bids were buried. He said Apex was the only option because they'd already paid him." The courtroom erupted. Donovan's face turned white as a sheet, and his lawyer scrambled to object. But the damage was done. Harper went on to describe how Donovan had bragged about the $5 million payout, saying it would fund his future presidential run. She even produced text messages where Donovan had told her, "Keep this quiet, Emily. We can't let anyone know." The messages were projected on a screen for the jury to see, and you could hear gasps from the audience. One juror shook her head in disbelief. Donovan's defense team tried to discredit Harper, claiming she was bitter after being fired from her job. They said she was lying to get revenge, and they pointed out that she'd signed a plea deal with the prosecution to avoid charges of her own. But Harper's testimony was too detailed, too specific. She knew things only an insider would know, like the exact dates of meetings, the names of Apex executives, and even the offshore account where Donovan had allegedly stashed the money. The jury was hanging on her every word. By the end of the week, the trial was all anyone could talk about. Cable news ran 24/7 coverage, with pundits debating whether Donovan could survive the scandal. On social media, #Donovan downfall was trending, with thousands of users sharing memes and hot takes. One viral post read, "Mark Donovan went from White House dreams to courthouse nightmares. Karma hits hard." Protesters gathered outside the courthouse, some holding signs that said, "Lock him up," while others chanted, "Justice for Texas." The pressure was mounting, and Donovan's carefully crafted image was crumbling before the nation's eyes. On November 17, 2024, the jury delivered its verdict. After just 4 hours of deliberation, they found Mark Donovan guilty on all counts: bribery, fraud, and misuse of public funds. The courtroom was dead silent as the foreman read the verdict. Donovan didn't move, didn't blink. His wife, sitting in the front row, burst into tears. The judge set sentencing for the following month, but the damage was already done. Donovan's career was over. He was facing up to 20 years in prison, and his political future was non-existent. The fallout was immediate. That same day, Donovan announced his resignation from the Senate, effective immediately. In a brief statement, he said, "I respect the jury's decision, but I maintain my innocence. I will continue to fight for the truth." But no one was buying it. His party abandoned him overnight. Senate Majority Leader John Carter released a statement saying, "Senator Donovan's actions do not reflect the values of the Republican Party. We stand for integrity, and we will not tolerate corruption." Even Donovan's most loyal supporters turned their backs on him. His campaign donors pulled their funding, and his staffers started looking for new jobs. The public reaction was brutal. In Texas, voters felt betrayed. One local news station interviewed a woman who said, "I voted for him because I thought he was different. Now I feel like a fool." Another man said, "He stole our money and lied to our faces. He deserves to rot in jail." Online, the outrage was even louder. A petition to strip Donovan of his pension gained over 100,000 signatures in 24 hours. Late-night comedians had a field day. Jimmy Kimmel joked, "Mark Donovan went from building highways to hitting the highway. Straight to prison." But here's where the story takes a twist. Just days after the verdict, rumors started swirling that there was more to the case than met the eye. An investigative journalist named Sarah Bennett published an article claiming that Emily Harper, the star witness, had been coerced into testifying. According to Bennett, Harper had been threatened with jail time for unrelated financial crimes unless she turned on Donovan. Bennett's sources claimed that the prosecution had fabricated parts of the evidence, including the text messages, to ensure a conviction. The article went viral, and suddenly, people were questioning whether Donovan had been set up. Donovan's supporters latched onto the theory. They argued that he was a victim of a deep state conspiracy, targeted because he was a threat to the establishment. A group of conservative activists launched a Free Donovan campaign, raising money for his appeal. They held rallies outside the courthouse, chanting, "Justice for Mark," and waving signs that said, "Stop the witch hunt." On X, the hashtag Donovan Innocent started trending, with users sharing Bennett's article and demanding a retrial. One popular post read, "The system took down Mark Donovan because he wouldn't play their game. We won't let them win." But not everyone was convinced. Critics pointed out that Bennett's article lacked hard evidence. It was mostly based on anonymous sources. They argued that Donovan was just trying to save face after being caught red-handed. A liberal commentator on CNN said, "This conspiracy theory is nonsense." The jury saw the evidence, and they made their decision. Donovan's guilty, and he's just grasping at straws. The debate raged on, dividing the country into two camps, those who believed Donovan was a corrupt politician who got what he deserved, and those who saw him as a martyr framed by a corrupt system. As the sentencing date approached, the tension was palpable. On December 15, 2024, Donovan returned to the courtroom to hear his fate. The judge didn't hold back. He called Donovan's actions a betrayal of public trust and said, "You abused your power for personal gain, and you've damaged the faith of the American people in their government." The judge sentenced Donovan to 15 years in federal prison, with no chance of parole for at least 10 years. He also ordered Donovan to pay $10 million in fines and restitution to the state of Texas. It was a harsh sentence, one of the toughest ever handed down to a sitting senator. Donovan's fall from grace was complete. He was taken into custody immediately, his hands cuffed as he was led out of the courtroom. Photographers swarmed him, snapping pictures of the once proud senator now reduced to a convicted felon. His wife and kids were nowhere to be seen. They'd already left Washington, unable to handle the public scrutiny. Donovan's legacy was in tatters. Political analysts said he'd go down in history as one of the most notorious examples of corruption in modern politics. But the story doesn't end there. In the months that followed, new developments kept the case in the headlines. In January 2025, a hacker group leaked internal emails from the prosecution team, revealing that they had indeed pressured Emily Harper to testify. One email from the lead prosecutor read, "We need Harper to flip, or we don't have a case. Do whatever it takes." The leak reignited the conspiracy theories, and Donovan's legal team filed for an appeal, arguing that the trial had been tainted by misconduct. The appeal is still pending, and legal experts say it could take years to resolve. Meanwhile, Apex Construction faced its own reckoning. The company's CEO was indicted on bribery charges, and the $2 billion infrastructure project was scrapped. Texas taxpayers were left footing the bill for the failed deal, and the state's governor promised a full investigation into how the contract was awarded in the first place. The scandal exposed deep flaws in the system, how money and power can corrupt even the most promising leaders. So, what's the truth? Was Mark Donovan a corrupt politician who sold out his constituents for a quick buck? Or was he a victim of a broken system, targeted because he dared to challenge the status quo? The answer might depend on who you ask. Some say the evidence against him was airtight, $5 million doesn't just disappear, and Harper's testimony was too detailed to be fake. Others believe the prosecution played dirty, framing Donovan to send a message to other politicians, "Step out of line, and we'll take you down." One thing is certain, Mark Donovan's career is over. He went from being the golden boy of the Republican Party to a cautionary tale, a name synonymous with scandal. His story is a reminder of how quickly power can turn to ruin in the cutthroat world of Washington politics. And as he sits in a federal prison cell, you have to wonder, what really happened behind closed doors? Did Donovan make a deal with the devil, or was he betrayed by the very system he swore to serve? What do you think? Was Mark Donovan guilty, or was he framed? Let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, stay curious, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that uncover the truth behind the headlines.